Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me here to join you in Moscow. I've been sending a few photographs home of what I saw walking around last evening to friends, and everybody seems to reply very briefly to me. They just use three letters, W-O-W. They go, wow. And I have to say, it's fantastic to be here with you. Now, what I'm going to do for you just briefly is give you a flavour of what happens in the United Kingdom around loss adjusting. And let me just tell you a bit about my background. I started in loss adjusting on Thursday, the 1st of October 1981, having left college the day before, having qualified as an engineer. There weren't many engineering jobs around, and loss adjusters were looking to change the way they worked. And I was one of the early scientists that Thomas Howell decided to recruit. Sure. Since then, I've worked with two of the majors around the world, Crawford and Cunningham, and their global executives managing compliance and corporate risks accounts. I've also worked for 2 years within our regulatory environment in the United Kingdom, working for the compensation scheme during the banking crisis and managing some of the payments for the UK government. And about 4.5 years ago, I joined SCOR to take the role of claims director for our business solutions business. So I'm head of claims for our business solutions business, which is our corporate risks business. So with that background, I then became the first president of CILA, who was a claims director. I'm currently deputy president of the Chartered Insurance Institute in the United Kingdom, and subject to the AGM will be the first claims director to be the president of the Chartered Insurance Institute. So I think gives a flavour that claims is very much on everybody's radar at the moment. Let me just try and therefore just give you a few ideas. We'll see if this works. Does it work? Where do we point? One of them. Oh well. I was going to introduce a few ideas that, as ever, the technology, you should never use technology like this. It's always very important to adapt. But what I wanted to just do is tell you a little bit about CILA, the loss adjusters in the United Kingdom. Been actually going as surveyors since around about the 18th century. The early loss adjusting firms were founded around about 1785, 1780. But in 1941, the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters was founded, and that therefore became, by Royal Charter in 1961, a recognised professional body and a training body. And I'll try and say a little bit about that. I can see we're just trying to sort out the slides, which is helpful because the next one probably is a bit visual, and I'd just like to try and draw that to you. What I'm going to try and show you as we go forward is really this. These are some of the words that our customers expect from us as loss adjusters. But in the middle, I've put two words that seem to me to be, or two phrases that seem to me very important and address, I think, the question that was put to Martin. What are the attributes of a good loss adjuster? Well, firstly, I think you have to be able to make decisions under pressure. And I think one of the tough pieces for an adjuster is you can't always be sure, because you're making those decisions in real time, that they're going to be right. But they need to be based on good quality information, and I'll come back to why we need to make decisions in terms of loss management and mitigation. Martin, I think, was also asked a little bit about what is the good characteristic for a loss adjuster. And I use the word empathy. And that's all about understanding that, generally speaking, the person that you're meeting did not plan to have an insurance claim that day. Now, there are exceptions to that, as we know, but most of the people that you're meeting did not set out that morning to have a flood, to have a fire, to have a theft. And it's very important to understand that. You're dealing with somebody to whom bad things have happened. And part of your job as a loss adjuster, in my view, is to try and make sure that the outcome is good and it's positive. And I'll come back to that point if I may. See if we can persuade it to go forward. Quite exciting, this. As Chuck talked about, there are quite a number of organisations in the claims arena in the United Kingdom. Internationally, as you've heard, we've got FUADI, IACP, ILAA, IFAA, CPCU, and this is often described by some of my colleagues as being like a spaghetti soup of alphabet. But we have two main professional bodies in the United Kingdom, the Chartered Insurance Institute and the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters, both, as I say, founded by Royal Charter. And to qualify as a loss adjuster, when I came into the practice, you had to pass your insurance exams first and then your loss adjusting exams. So in 5 years, I was expected to do 16 exams and pass them all. And if I didn't, then I couldn't become a partner of a loss adjusting practice and I couldn't become a branch manager. And interestingly, the day I qualified, I became a branch manager, and it was part of the progression of the business at that time. Things have changed, things have moved on. We also have a number of other groups that look over claims who we talk to, from the loss adjusters, the Association of British Insurers, Lloyd's, British Insurance Brokers Association, and many other organisations. And I have to say, probably as it is in every country around the world, it's a very confusing mix of people with whom one needs to speak. A number of professions are involved in claims handling, and it's changing. As I've already said, I'm an engineer, and actually I'm a biochemist as well. And I was brought in to provide a different type of expertise, and I was one of a group of people that loss adjusting firms were recruiting at that time. We also recruited chartered surveyors, because within the United Kingdom, household subsidence claims have become a major issue for the insurance market. Insurance companies didn't want to deal with those claims themselves, and they turned to the expertise that they believed loss adjusters could bring. Forensic accountants, business interruption claims dominate much of the commercial landscape, and loss adjusters responded by recruiting accountants. I remember in 1984 working with one of the first accountants who came into the industry, and a former president, Neil Warden, has been one of the leading exponents of how we should deal with business interruption claims. A former colleague of mine, Harry Roberts, is one of the leading authors on the subject in a book called Riley on Business Interruption. It's actually written by Harry Roberts, along with other loss adjusters. So we're seeing change. We're seeing lawyers come into the business. We're seeing insurance surveyors. We're also seeing, of course, now that the qualification of loss adjusting is so valuable that actually those who were formerly customers of loss adjusters want to have qualified loss adjusters on the staff. And indeed, in my own team globally, I employ 3 qualified loss adjusters, and I'm not alone in doing that. Around 10% of the associates and fellows of the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters in the United Kingdom work for insurers or for brokers. One other little group just to mention as well, claims presenters, people who work for clients, for customers, for policyholders to present claims. And again, you're starting to see more loss adjusters working in that arena, dealing with the independence that loss adjusters have always prized and which is critical, I think, to success. So, the role of the adjuster. One profession, as it says, dedicated to claims. And it's very interesting, actually, every time I've been asked what is the role of a loss adjuster, there's only one place I can actually find it. We don't seem to define it well. So the role is investigate cause. In the United Kingdom, to investigate policy liability, and in many cases advise. And that's subtly different to some of the expert system that we might see in other countries. To advise on damage mitigation and claims procedures. How can the claim be handled? What's the best way to resolve that? To investigate quantum, and to investigate third-party recoveries. Now, I've looked at this, which comes from the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters. It's been there within our code for about 40 years. And it seemed to me that one thing that was really missing was the actual purpose, which is to actually negotiate and settle claims. And I think part of what the CILA will be doing over the next year or so is to have another look and to say, what is the purpose of a loss adjuster? And perhaps to start to redefine some of that. It's very easy to forget the importance, though, of these steps in claims management. And I like the simplicity of it, but I would like us to remind ourselves of our purpose. In terms of regulation, it's interesting to see that the UK regulator, although subscribing through to the general European rules, the Financial Conduct Authority being our regulator, has taken a risk-based view and has formed a view that handling insurance claims does not create a risk at this stage that needs to be managed directly through loss adjusters. However, there are a number of underlying principles in terms of claims management. And one of them is that all customers need to be treated fairly. So at the heart of all claims handling is treating customers fairly. And for chartered loss adjusters, that sits very comfortably with the charter that was created in 1961, which was all about treating customers fairly and being independent in that task. Interestingly, claims handling by an insurer is a regulated activity. There has to be a clearly defined complaints process behind all claims handling. And outsourcing of claims has to be clearly delegated. So, as an insurer, I have to show clearly that I have done due diligence with the adjusters that I work with, and that I have a contract with those adjusters for the services. And therefore, I provide the regulatory framework for claims as an insurer within the United Kingdom. Loss adjusting is not currently regulated directly, and there were a number of discussions around that. As I say, the view was that that would be managed through the insurer themselves. So the insurer has to manage all outsourced contracts. The Financial Services Conduct Authority has conducted some reviews of claims handling, and interestingly invited 2 past presidents of the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters to look at how we handled commercial claims. Some of the findings were not always as positive as we might like, but a number were. I think the main focus came around speed and communication, as you might expect. Delegated claims handling to third-party administrators is a regulated activity, and a number of the major loss adjusting firms in the United Kingdom have registrations with the Financial Conduct Authority to allow them to handle claims in that environment. Claims presentation on behalf of a policyholder is also a regulated activity. In terms of qualification, as I've already said, when I came into the industry, we had to qualify with the Chartered Insurance Institute first, and then with the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters. And there is a framework. Interestingly, within the Chartered Insurance Institute framework, there isn't a very obvious dedicated claims handling route through. There are a number of claims papers, but part of the work that's going to be carried out working with CILA is to develop perhaps a more joined up approach to this. I think one of the questions also that's starting to emerge within the United Kingdom and within a lot of the work we're doing in claims is, actually, how do you start to define a professional? Can you define them by exams alone? Is there more? Is it about ongoing training? Is it about a code of ethics? What is it about? And I think we're seeing across the world many challenges to who professionals are and what you can reasonably expect. And I think that debate will start now and continue over the next 5 to 10 years. So let me just sort of wrap up then with just a couple of thoughts. A UK view of what a future claims professional might be like. And I think some of this touches on many of the questions that we've had already today, and many of the points raised by Martin and addressed also by Chuck. I think at the heartland, there's some sort of baseline, whether that's from the regulators, whether that's from the industry, whether that's from customers who just say, this is what we'd like. And it's worth reflecting that when I came into the industry, a claims operation used to be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Shops in the United Kingdom weren't open on a Sunday, and it was unusual to actually do anything in terms of a bank other than to walk into a branch and meet a branch manager. Now we bank online, we expect 24/7 service, and I think those customer standards will start to underpin where the future claims professionals go and the way in which they use technology. Then we need some technical guidelines, which can come from our professional bodies, but also from our trade associations. They're out there, and we need to try and consolidate them to start to get some sort of best practice. What does good look like in claims? And there's been a lot of work done. In the United States, there was some work done a few years back trying to say, what does world-class in claims look like? And we've done very similar work in Lloyd's of London, and there's more work to be done, I think. Then we need some relevant training. And that may well not be exams. It may well look different in the future. But for the moment, it's about having exams that are relevant at each level, from a certificate through to diploma, through to an advanced diploma. And there are many sources for that. And then ultimately, it's all about actually understanding that we're here to serve customers. And that has to come from the firms. It has to come from the individuals. It has to be about us all having people skills, those soft skills around investigation and negotiation. At the heart of it, though, let me just close with just 2 thoughts for you. One, I think there has to be, for any professional, a code of ethics. If you want to call yourself a professional, you have to subscribe to a code of ethics. If you want to be a successful loss adjuster, you have to be independent in your judgment. You have to be fair. But above all else, and I think Chuck's touched on this, actually, you've got to continue with your education. I think it's absolutely vital for professionals going forward that continuing professional development is absolutely on their radar. And so I hope those thoughts are helpful. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Коллеги, вопросы?
Я думаю, что мы сможем обсудить
Можно я задам вопрос? У меня все-таки есть вопрос.
регламент. У меня тоже есть вопрос.
Тогда по одному и дальше.
Я хотела задать вот какой вопрос. А есть ли место современным цифровым технологиям в регулировании убытков? Или все-таки это будет удел именно, так сказать, персонального подхода, душевных разговоров с клиентом, так сказать, понимания его ситуации?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think it's very easy to forget you're dealing with people who are not in a good place. And I think all of us, if we had our own claim, would probably like to talk to somebody. Even in this world of Facebook, WhatsApp, Snapchat, email, I think many of us in those situations want a personal contact, and that can be provided by a good quality loss adjuster, in my view. But the role of digital, to me, is very important. If you look at what Chuck's described around Hurricane Harvey, we've got satellite imagery coming back from there. We've got CCTV coverage. And we're working very hard with the adjusters to try and get preliminary estimates of the loss. And using digital technology, you can move information quickly. In my adjusting days, I used a drone to go into an earthquake-damaged building because it was significantly safer to fly a drone in than for me to go and walk around the building. And I think it's about understanding what the potential for the technology is. The most impressive piece of technology that I still think we have is a mobile phone. It's amazing what you can send back through a mobile phone. And I think sometimes we forget that some very simple tools can transform how we handle claims. And I like to keep it simple.
Thank you.
And my turn. You mentioned that, извините.
Микрофон переводчик.
Вы упомянули, что отрасль является регулируемой FCA. Есть ли в регулировании требования по уровню подготовки непосредственно лосс-аджастеров и есть ли какие-то требования по непрерывности образования или периодичности переподготовки?
At the moment, there isn't a requirement for training for claims handlers. There have been requirements for financial advisors, and you've seen the regulator moving across other sectors of the financial industry. My sense is that claims will start to come up on the agenda. The time frame, very difficult to predict. But from our perspective within the loss adjusters, CILA, what we're promoting is that you should try and trade in the United Kingdom with people who are well qualified. What I think is very noticeable is that our customers, the major insurance companies, are looking to work with people who are qualified and who are trained. And I think the customer driver will be very, very pronounced in that regard. And certainly one of the findings out of the review that was done was that qualified loss adjusters dealing with commercial claims delivered positive results. And for me, part of being qualified is to understand what you're there to do and then to deliver on it.
Спасибо большое. И я с удовольствием передам слово